Going on, guys? In this video, I'm going to be giving my official predictions for the college football playoff 2025 to 2026. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Starting off, we got the 8-9 game, Alabama versus Oklahoma. This will be the opening game of the playoff Friday night in Norman. This, I think, regardless of whether or not you think Alabama should have made it, is a really interesting first round matchup because these teams played earlier in the year. A lot of people are saying that, and I kind of agree with this, that Alabama was in control of that game for most of the game, made a couple critical errors that caused Oklahoma to win it. It feels like Alabama, that was kind of the start of them trending downwards. That was also a huge game confidence-wise for Oklahoma, considering they won that game on the road. So I think the story for this game is going to be, can the Oklahoma offense generate enough? Because we know that their defense is tried and true. It's going to pose many challenges for Alabama. I think this will be a low-scoring affair. So I think the question is going to be, can John Mateer, who was once a Heisman hopeful at the beginning of the year before his hand injury, can he make enough plays offensively? Alabama, we know that they've been struggling to run the ball. There was that -3 rushing yards statistic in the SEC title game. Granted, that's against Georgia, but Oklahoma also has a really strong defense. And I actually think that Oklahoma is going to be the ones to win this game. I do think Batir is going to make enough plays when needed, and I think this defense will be able to hold up for a solid 60 minutes of football, and I think they'll get a win in a close, low-scoring affair. JMU and Oregon, this one there's no question about whatsoever. Oregon will win this game handily. Autzon's going to be rocking for a home playoff game. It's the nightcap on Saturday night. This game is going to be over fast. Miami and A&M. This is an interesting one because A&M, the more I think about it, the less trust I have in them. They really avoided most of the SEC powerhouses on their schedule. Um, I'm kind of hesitant to go all in on them and say that they're one of these top tier contenders, like some of these other SEC teams. Um, and Miami, then you got Miami, who was obviously looking like they were not going to make the playoffs, 3 weeks ago, and then they worked their way back up. They get to that spot where the head-to-head comes into play. They get in over Notre Dame. They're in at the 10 seed. And Carson Beck, we know he's experienced. We know who Carson Beck is at this point. Marcel Reed's athletic. He's going to do his thing. I think it's going to help that it's at Kyle Field. We know that place can get loud and rowdy. That should be a really entertaining game. But I'm actually going to go with the Hurricanes to get a win here. I think they're going to be playing highly motivated. They don't want to make themselves look foolish because a lot of people are going to be There's going to be a lot of heavy scrutiny on them and Alabama. So I think Miami's going to be very motivated to go out there, play hard. And I like the experience of Carson Beck to get the win on the road against an inexperienced A&M team that I'm not completely sold on simply because they seem to not have played the schedule up to par with some of these other SEC teams. And I know that's not really their fault. I'm not blaming them. I'm just saying I personally have a harder time trusting them. So I'm going to go with the Canes. Then Tulane and Ole Miss. We saw these teams play earlier in the year. Ole Miss absolutely crushed them. We know that Lane Kiffin is gone. That's obviously something to consider, although I don't think it's going to make that big of an impact here. Give me Ole Miss big in this one. Oklahoma and Indiana, these games will be on New Year's Day and New Year's Eve, and I actually think that's my one issue with this expanded playoff is it takes too long, in my opinion. I think um, I think the semifinal games should be played on New Year's Day and New Year's Eve because you're getting to a point where we're going to see the semifinals. One of the semifinal games this year will be played on a Thursday night, and that just doesn't seem right for this because I mean it's a Thursday night and it's not New Year's Day. And the problem with it expanding is you push the dates back further and it runs into scheduling conflicts with stuff like the NFL because the NFL starts playing on Saturdays. Um, and that's the college football is then at risk for losing viewership. So that's my only issue with this. I would love for these first round games to have started last week, then this week to be the first round of bowl games. I'd be a big proponent of that. I think that'd be fun. And then we could get the semifinals done New Year's Day, and then we could still have the championship on a Monday night. But regardless, Oklahoma and Indiana. Fernando Mendoza, new Heisman winner. He's been kind of the feel-good story of this season, in my opinion. And Indiana's probably been one of the biggest, if not the biggest, surprises in general. Um, in terms of success, you look at failures, maybe you put like Penn State up there, Clemson. Um, but yeah, I'm really big on this Indiana team. They're obviously battle tested. They beat Ohio State, who I think is probably the best team on paper. Um, and Oklahoma, we know that their defense is good. I use that as reasoning for why I think they would hold up against Bama, and then their offense will make enough plays. I don't know if they will be able to put up as strong of a defensive performance against a better offense in Indiana while also scoring enough to keep up. And I think Indiana is going to put a little bit of distance between the two in this game, and I think they'll win this one by, I'd say, around 10 points. Texas Tech and Oregon, this will be an interesting one because I think a lot of people are kind of doubting Texas Tech. Maybe they haven't watched them. Maybe they think, oh, they played in the Big 12. They haven't really played anybody, which isn't totally false. I think BYU was a good team, and Texas Tech absolutely killed them both times. And then you've got Oregon. This is another team that I feel like people aren't talking about because they've kind of been the third wheel in the Big Ten all season. And that's not like I'm not saying that they should get talked about more, um, because when you got IU and OSU in the Big Ten, obviously they're going to be grabbing the headlines. This is an Oregon team that is really coming into form lately. They had a really difficult stretch to finish their season. They went on the road to Iowa. They got that win. They beat USC. They won at their rival in Washington, and they're looking solid. And I really like how Dante Moore and his squadron of wide receivers is doing. I believe was it Kenyon Sadiq. I don't know if he's healthy. I think he's healthy. That'll be huge for them if they can get all their offense healthy. They got some firepower on offense. And then Baron Morton, on the other hand, the Texas Tech QB, he's been playing really well too. And the thing about Texas Tech is their defense. Their defense is really solid, and it will be formidable for any opponent, regardless of whether they have played maybe the schedule to some of these other teams, but I'm actually going to go with the Ducks to win this one. I know this Tech defense is good, but I think Oregon's offense will be stronger in some situations where it matters. I expect a close game. Would not be surprised if Tech wins this, but I'm going to go with the Ducks because I trust in Dante Moore in this offense. Then we got Miami and Ohio State. In my opinion, Ohio State, the best team on paper. They got Heisman finalist, I should say, Julian Sayin. Obviously, they got Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, loaded defensively. This team is just not the team you want to see, and it's a tough draw for Miami because you got to go to Kyle Field and then you get Ohio State if you win that game. This is where I think Carson Beck could start to have some struggles because A&M's defense is not as good as Ohio State's defense. And then on the other hand, once this Ohio State offense gets rolling, they get rolling. We saw it against Michigan, staying through the pick early on, and then it felt like for the rest of the game, the Wolverines could not get a stop. And I think that could be a very similar situation we see here. I can see Miami keeping it close, but ultimately, I think Ohio State will win this game. Then lastly, Georgia and Ole Miss. Georgia won this game earlier in the season. It was a very close contest. It was a great game. And Georgia is one of those teams that is peaking at the right time. It's them and Indiana that I think are the two hottest right now. And honestly, maybe Georgia might be the hottest team. They crushed Alabama in the conference championship game. They've looked like far and away the best team in the SEC. This defense is another really tough defense, along with Ohio State and these other top contenders. Then Ole Miss, on the other hand, you really have to question, is this where Lane Kiffin departing will come to hurt them? I'm not really sure how they're going to respond to this adversity. I think it helps them that they get Tulane, and not saying anything against Tulane, but it's a bit of an easier first round game that'll help them out. But I'm going to go with Georgia to win this one. I think their defense will get the stops necessary um, to get past Ole Miss. Semifinals, IU and Oregon. This is an interesting rematch, and I really hope this game comes to be because we all know Indiana won at Autzen earlier this year. And if you know anything about Dan Lanning, it's that he knows that, he remembers that game, and he's gonna have his guys fired up. And if it was any other team with Dan Lanning going back for a revenge game, I would I would be very worried for their opponent. But you gotta consider Curt Cignetti's on the other hand, AP Coach of the Year 2 years in a row now, and this guy's ice cold. So that's gonna be a really interesting matchup. Two of the most charismatic, maybe not charismatic, two of the most entertaining coaches in the college game. But I actually think that Oregon is gonna come out with that chip on their shoulder, and they're gonna be playing hard. I think they're gonna want this game more than IU, which is something crazy to say, and this could really come back to haunt me because you can never count on an IU team under Curt Cignetti for being motivated. but I'm gonna go with the Ducks to win this one. I like their offense. I think they're, like I mentioned earlier, they're hitting their stride at the right time. I'm going with the little upset pick here, Ducks to the title game. And then this other matchup is, I think, well, I don't want to spoil it, but I think these are the two uh, favorites, in my opinion, to win the whole thing, Georgia and Ohio State. And oh, it's so hard. This is a really tough game for me because I want to say Ohio State, but then I get back to the fact that Georgia is on absolute fire right now, and we don't know how Ohio State will be responding. Maybe they get down in a little bit of a hole early on because this Georgia offense has been clicking too. Gunnar Stockton's playing well. This is really just a toss-up for me. I think the winner of this game, I think, has the best shot at winning the whole thing. I'm gonna go with the Bulldogs. I think their defense is gonna get just a couple more stops than Ohio State. This will be a close game, an entertaining one. And I got the Dogs taking it to the title game where they will play Oregon, and I'm taking the Dogs to win the whole thing. Georgia reigning supreme once again. I think in this game, you got to look at Oregon maybe running out of steam because they will have played the extra game. I think that Texas Tech opponent is a really it's a favorable first it's if they could play any of the first four seeds, they would want to play Texas Tech, but I think that's still going to be a tough game. IU is not going to be an easy game. I think Georgia will be coming in full of confidence. They'll beat Ole Miss, they'll beat Ohio State, they'll be feeling like the best team. And I think Georgia, I trust Kirby Smart. I think Oregon gets close, but give me the Dogs to win this title. Anyways, guys, so those are my predictions for the college football playoff. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you in the next one.